Hello everyone, how are you all? It's Laura here from See Clear Counselling and here again 4:30 on a Tuesday afternoon with my live video, and today we're going to talk about that inner critical voice that can be very hurtful and hateful to ourselves, and look at ways that we can stop that inner critical voice. So Alex, hi Alex, you're actually watching, are you? Nice to see you. So, as usual, I will be putting the replay up onto my Facebook page, See Clear Counselling, and if you're watching on the replay, then please let me know that you're watching on the replay. If you're watching live, then give me a little wave, give me a thumbs up, let me know that you're there, because it's always nice to know that I'm not talking to myself. Also, I'll write a blog based on the contents of this video, and as always I will upload that onto my website www.seeclearcounselling.co.uk. And if anxiety is something that you struggle with on a regular basis, then we have the anxiety group, Beating Anxiety Through COVID-19 and Beyond, and you can search for that on Facebook and ask to join. Just answer the 3 questions and I'll welcome you in. And actually this week in the group we're doing a little challenge about how to understand and manage your anxiety more. We've got prizes and things up for grabs as well. So if you want to join in that challenge, then do please ask to join the Beating Anxiety group. So, as I say, today we're going to talk about the inner critical voice. And if there's anything that I say that resonates with you or something that you feel makes sense to you, then why not give me a thumbs up or a little emoji and let me know that what I'm saying is actually making sense to you. And if you've got any comments to make, I'm more than happy to read your comments and make any responses if they're needed. So we've all got an inner critical voice, every one of us has one. You know, it sometimes rears its ugly head and it tells us horrible things about ourselves or horrible things about other people. And, you know, we can talk to ourselves in a very critical way. So quite often if we're annoyed or we're angry about something that we've done, then we may well talk to ourselves in that critical voice. And quite often it's the voice that we may use with other people if they annoy us or make us angry. So it's a part of all of us. So for example, you know, if you failed your driving test, your inner critic might say, well, I knew you wouldn't pass that, you're such a useless driver. Or maybe you forget a friend's birthday and your inner critical voice goes, how can you be so stupid and cruel to forget your best friend's birthday? She's not going to talk to you now. However, we know that those things aren't really true and that those thoughts are not rational thoughts for us. And so our kinder voice comes along and says, do you know, it's okay that you failed your driving test. You've got another opportunity. I'm sure you'll do okay next time. Or it doesn't matter that you forgot your friend's birthday. You know, you can make up to it now and just give her a call and say happy birthday. She's still going to be friends with you. So usually we know how to talk down that critical voice and not believe what it's saying and that it's not true. However, if you have an inner critical voice that is constantly there and you're unable to stop it, and it undermines you constantly and it interferes in you being able to lead your life, then it's a problem and it's something that you need to do something about. Because if you have a consistent critical inner voice, it becomes your internal enemy. It can affect every aspect of your life, your self-esteem, your self-confidence. It can interfere in your personal and intimate relationships. It can interfere with your performance and your accomplishments at school and at work. It undermines all of our positive feelings about ourselves and about others, and we get this low self-esteem, low self-worth, and can very often lead to distrust of other people because we're constantly getting negative messages about ourselves and about others. So where does our inner critical voice come from? Well, very often these inner voices can come from our early life experiences. You know, we've internalized things that we've experienced through growing up and through general life, and then we turn them into ways that we think about ourselves. So often many of these negative voices could come from parents or other adult role models that we had when we were children and we were growing up. And we pick up these negative attitudes that they have towards us or about us, and then we start to internalise them as the truth. Now, quite often they're not intentional, they're not deliberately trying to put us down. Sometimes they might be, but not all of the time. But if we're consistently hearing the same message, then we start to believe that, and it becomes our internal voice. So for example, it might be, as a small child, maybe you brought paintings home from school and you think, you know what, mum's going to put those on the fridge like all of the other kids' mums do. And you give your painting to mum and she looks at it and she goes, it's not very good, is it? And she throws it in the bin. You've then got, if she does that consistently, an internal voice that tells you you're either rubbish at creativity or you're not good enough. And you start to use that voice on a consistent basis. It might be maybe at maths at school, you don't get things right very often and you're told you're stupid, and every time you get something wrong, you're told, how can you be stupid for not understanding that? That internal voice through your life then tells you that you're stupid when it comes to numbers and maths, and you believe that. Maybe you're always told that maybe you're not as good as your older sibling and you won't match up to them, and so you grow up with this inner critic telling you that you're inferior to your siblings and to others who are above you. And so that inner critic becomes part of your everyday thought process that goes through your head. And it's a constant negative comment that you receive as part of your inner dialogue. We might also pick up these negatives from views that our parents have of themselves, because actually we believe what our parents and adults in our young life, what they think about life must be the truth, because we don't know any different. So if we've maybe got a mum who's consistently saying, oh, I look so fat in this, I'm so fat, I need to exercise and I need to eat salads and exercise all the time, maybe you'll grow up with this internal voice that tells you that being fat is bad. Or maybe you've got a dad who's saying, I'm not being recognised at work, I've got to work really hard, I've got to work all the hours there are, I've got to go in and do the overtime, I need to prove myself so that when the next promotion is up, I'm going to get the promotion. So maybe you're receiving messages that you have to work hard in life to be able to get anywhere. So you hear these messages and you believe that's how life is, and they start to become your inner critical voices. Maybe you were bullied as a child, told that you're ugly or stupid and no one wants to be your friend. Again, if you're told that enough, then that becomes your inner critical voice. So what do we need to do to conquer those voices that are in our head? They're just thoughts. You know, we call it an inner critical voice. They are just those negative thoughts that we are having in our head. So the easiest way to identify that voice is to become aware of that internal commentary that's going on in your head. And quite often it's happening unconsciously, so you're not really aware of it. So think about what's the internal commentary that you're having about the environment, about others around you, about what you do. And over time, really focus on the messages that you are giving to yourself about all of that. And then you'll start to see how you're being judgmental or criticising of others. And if that's a consistent thing that's happening, then start to identify what are the comments and judgments that you make about yourself. And I would pay particular attention of when you slip into suddenly being in a bad mood, or you've become upset, or you're feeling very angry and you're not really sure why you've suddenly gone into that place. And think about what were the thoughts that you had before you went into that place, and you'll probably identify your critical inner voice. Now in the counselling room, we work very much about reframing your thoughts and how to speak more kindly to yourself. So, do any of you recognise this inner critical voice? Do any of you have an inner critic that is constantly telling you all these bad things about yourself? Well, what we need to do is make that voice kinder. So in the counselling room, we use what we call a thought record, and that helps you look at your thoughts in a different way. So we gather all the evidence and the facts that support your inner critic, And then we gather all the evidence and the facts that actually prove that your inner critic is wrong or is not entirely true. We then reframe the words that you say to be kinder and more helpful to you. So your inner critic is a bully who wants to hurt you and wants you to experience negative emotions. And that what we do is we reframe your thoughts by making the words that you speak to yourself much kinder and more compassionate. And so your response is a much more positive emotion. Think about changing how you act when you hear that critical voice. So for example, you're at a party, you see someone that you'd like to introduce yourself to, but your inner critical voice might say, that person's not interested in speaking to you. Why would they want to speak to someone like you? Ask yourself the question, how does my inner critical voice know that? How have they formed the opinion that that person doesn't want to speak to me when I've never even met that person? So where we worked in the counselling room with that thought record and finding the evidence, we can start to question that inner critical voice. You might actually find it effective to say out loud to yourself or internally to yourself, do you know what? I'm not going to listen to you. If there's no reason why they wouldn't want to be introduced to me. I'm going to go across and speak to them. That inner critical voice can also be what leads to our destructive behaviours about ourselves, because it's telling us things about ourselves that we don't feel are true. So at that same party, it might be saying to you, do you know what, you're not very confident here, are you? You're not really talking to all the people that you should do. You need another drink to give you that confidence. Go and get another drink at the bar. That will give you the confidence that you need. Actually, you're saying, let me challenge that voice. Because I'm doing okay here, I don't need another drink. And if I have another drink, I might make a fool of myself and I might feel a bit rubbish in the morning. So actually, I don't need to hear that inner critical voice. I'm quite happy and I'm going to go and talk to people without having another drink. In the moment, you could use what we call the THINKS acronym. So you can say, right, I've heard that inner critical voice, I'm hearing what it's saying, so I'm going to go through THINKS. And you say T, is what that inner critical voice saying to me true? H, is what it's saying to me helpful? I, is it inspiring to me? N, is it absolutely necessary what my inner critical voice is telling me? K, am I being kind to myself? Unlikely. And S, is this something that a friend would say to me? So that's a very good acronym to remember. And what I'll do is I'll put a little worksheet underneath with that acronym, and maybe you can download that and think about that. And Marie's saying that she has an inner critic every day. Yeah, and it's being able to find ways to actually be kinder to yourself, to stop that inner critic being there every day, because it's not helpful to you, is it, having that inner critic? So think about ways that you can speak more kindly to yourself. So some of these things that I'm talking about, maybe you can try and introduce those into your life. A good way is to try and externalize that inner critic, bring the thoughts out of your head and make that inner critic almost into something real. So it's not just going on in your head and it's just something that, maybe I don't need to do anything about that. And we have a number of different strategies in counselling that we use for that. You could imagine that you've got a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. And when you hear that devil speaking to you, that inner critic, you then turn to the angel and you say, well, what do you think of that? What are we going to do? We're not going to listen to the devil. Oh, right. Julie, I always say we wouldn't allow someone to talk to ourselves this way, so we should definitely not talk to ourselves badly. Absolutely, Julie. As you say, it's being able to be kind to yourself and understand what that inner critic is trying to do. It is trying to be destructive, and so we need to prevent it from being destructive. So we don't want the devil, we want the angel talking to us. Maybe turn that voice into a monster. It's not you talking to yourself, it's some monster that's come and talking to you in a way that you wouldn't want to talk to yourself. So visualize that monster that's talking to you and not yourself. Visualize your thoughts as a friend walking alongside you. So bring the thoughts out of your head, visualize them as a friend walking alongside you, holding your hand. And when they say hateful or untrue things to you, think about, do I really want that friend walking along next to me, holding my hand, saying all these hateful things to me? Do you know, if that was a real friend, as Julie says, wouldn't talk to a friend like that. Why would I let a friend talk to me like that? Why am I letting my voice talk to me in that way? I'm going to swap you for a friend that I like. I'm going to find a friend that will walk and hold my hand, who's nice to me, encouraging to me, speaks to me in a nice way. So we're going to turn that inner critic, take them externally, turn them into a friend of ours. When they start saying hateful and horrible things, we choose another friend, and we choose that friend that is kind and compassionate to us. A good thing to do is imagine someone you love who appreciates you and loves you for who you are. We've all got someone in our life who tells us good things about ourselves, who maybe spoils us, who makes us feel good because of how they treat us. So think about that person. Maybe they have a pet name for you, or an endearment that they use when they always speak to you, maybe darling or sweetheart. And when you start hearing your inner critic, think of that person and recall them to mind, and imagine them talking to you in that moment. What would they be telling you about that inner critical voice that's going on? So maybe when your inner critic has said to you, oh, you're so stupid for doing that. Imagine that friend next to you, that person that appreciates you, that treats you, that spoils you, and imagine their voice in your head, how they would be speaking to you. And they might say something along the lines of, do you know, that's okay, it doesn't matter. I love you still. I still love you, sweetheart. You're still my favourite person. So think about, that person that really sees the true you and not that inner critical voice. So it's all about moving away from the inner critical voice and finding out how you can be more compassionate to yourself and talking kinder words. It can be difficult. It's almost like learning a new language. You've always spoken to yourself in this hateful and critical way, and now you're trying to learn phrases and words that allow you to talk to yourself in a more compassionate and kind way. And at first it can be really difficult. It's like moving from speaking English to yourself all the time to now you're going to have to speak French to yourself. It's not going to happen overnight. You've got to learn the words and the phrases. You've got to learn how to put them together. So actually, seeking help from a counsellor can be really helpful. I've helped many people understand their own internal world. Why are there these tendencies towards these negative patterns of thinking and behaviour? We have a safe space, or a safe place. I think I mixed them up. So I still can't do it. A safe space to explore the origins of that critical inner voice, help you work out ways to change the way that you speak to yourself. Now, sometimes when we're making that change, it can be quite anxiety provoking, because getting rid of our inner critic is no exception to raising our anxiety, because we're challenging things that we've always done. And no matter how hard and difficult and hateful and horrible you feel that inner critic is, actually it's always how you've treated yourself, and it can be really difficult to pull yourself away from that, and it can actually be quite anxiety provoking to pull yourself away from treating you in a different way. It's almost uncomfortable, because although you're trying to be kinder to yourself, it's completely foreign feeling for you. So some help and support along the way to help you calm down that anxiety as you go through that journey can be really useful, and that's where counselling can be really helpful to you. So let's find a way of, perhaps sometimes we can't completely get rid of those critical voices, but we'll find that more kind and compassionate way to live. And sometimes we might have to say, do you know, some of those critical voices are still going to go on. I'm still going to say some of that to myself. But then you can understand why you're saying it, and instead of fighting them, learn to accept them. So if we've explored why that inner critical voice is there so often, and why it's making you so hateful towards yourself, you might start to realise that actually I don't need to listen to it all the time, and I can accept that it's there, but I don't have to listen to it. So we can work on things like that as well. So if you feel your inner critical voice has been holding you back, maybe think about how to be kinder to yourself, how to start to reframe those thoughts, and maybe even challenge that inner critic. And if you struggle with it, then why not reach out to a counsellor for help? And as I work with people like it all the time, I've got a very good understanding of why that might be happening and how you can change things to enable yourself to live a much kinder life to yourself. So much nicer when you feel your self-worth and you feel the self-esteem that you really have, and you stop telling yourself those horrible things that you've been saying to yourself for so long. So maybe there's some little exercises that you can try there and some ways to help you move away from that inner critical voice and perhaps understand why that inner critical voice might be there. So I hope that's been helpful to you, and as always I will put up the replay onto my Facebook page, See Clear Counselling. So Tina, you're watching the replay, so you just caught the end of us, so yes, you might want to watch the beginning on replay. I'll also write a blog about this, and I'll put that onto my website, www.seeclearcounselling.co.uk. And as I say, if anxiety is something that you struggle with, and certainly this inner critical voice is going to be a big contributor to you feeling anxious, because it makes you question yourself all the time. And when you question yourself, it can make you really anxious about what's going on around you, the things that are happening, and that actually you almost feel like they're happening out of you being able to have any control of them. And when you learn that it's that inner critical voice that is creating that environment for you, very often find that your anxiety will start to reduce and you feel more comfortable and you feel safer in the world. So really is important to try and stop that inner critical voice. Make today the day that you start being kinder to yourself, more compassionate to yourself, and start to tell that inner critical voice that you don't need to hear it anymore. So I'll be checking in with you again next Tuesday at the same time, 4:30 p.m, and I'll be thinking of another subject to talk to you all about. But I hope that that's been helpful to some of you today to try and rethink about maybe how you talk to yourself in your head and how you can start to talk to yourself in a different way and make life much more enjoyable for yourself. The sun's still shining, so it's nice to be able to perhaps get out into the garden. I'm going to go and have a cup of tea now and relax, and I hope that all of you can make use of this lovely weather that we're now having. And I'll check in with you again next week. Take care now. Bye.